Hey guys, as you probably have noticed, I've started doing Zbrush videos a while back, and one of the questions I received is, can you do a really basic introduction video for people that are opening the software package for the very first time? Okay, so the user interface, how to get started, and so forth. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Here we go. All right, guys, we're in Zbrush. We're in 4R8, and like I said, this video is for people that have never worked in Zbrush ever before. So if you have any experience at all, just forget about this video, right? I'm going to talk about the user interface. I'm going to talk about how to get started, and I know from experience that Zbrush is very hard to get into, especially if you have experience with programs like Blender, Maya, 3ds Max, and so forth. ZBrush is a whole different animal, right? But that said, we're just going to jump in. This is by no means going to be a complete tutorial. It is just going to be a tutorial to get you started, right? Okay, so I open up the ZBrush. This is what I get, right? Now let's just draw on the screen. Let's see what happens. I'm just going to hold down my left mouse button, and there you go. So what is that? Well, this is what is called 2.5D within ZBrush. I never use it personally, but it is something you can do. And it's called 2.5D because you're basically drawing in 2D, but it kind of has a 3D feel to it, right? So we don't want that. So what we do want is an object that we can manipulate in 3D, right? Okay. Now a couple of things you need to remember. We got this thing up here called Lightbox, and when you click on this, you see a whole bunch of options. What you've been working on last time, you got projects, tools, all sorts of things you can play with, right? But for now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to click on the light box again to turn it off, or you can, when it's turned on, you can hit the comma key, which will do the same thing, right? Okay, so what are we going to do then if we're not going to use that? We're going to go up to this big S right here. We're going to click on it. We're going to move our mouse to the sphere 3D, and we're going to click on that. Okay, so where's my sphere? Well, it's not there yet. What you need to do is you need to left click and drag and then release. There you go. Okay, so can I work on this in 3D then? Well, no, you still can't, because you need to do two things. One, you need to click on this edit button up here, and two, you need to click on make polymesh 3D. So now you have an object you can manipulate in 3D, right? But first, let me tell you how the navigation works. And for that, what I'll do is go to this button right here to turn on polyframe, so you can see the mesh on my sphere. And what I'm simply going to do is hold down my left mouse button and move it around. And as we do that, you can see that the object is rotating in place, but it's not panning, right? So how do I do that? Well, you hold down your Alt key and you left click and you move it around like this. And now for the tricky one, how do you zoom in and out? Well, what you do is you hold down the Alt key, left click, and then you drag your mouse, and while you're doing that, you release the Alt key, okay? So I'm dragging, I release, and now you can zoom in and out. All right, so it looks pretty horrible, but trust me, once you do this, half an hour or so, you get used to it, okay? Cool. Okay, so now that I have that, and I have this set up as a editable 3D object, what can I do with it? Well, you can sculpt on it, you can paint on it, and so forth. But for this video, we're going to focus on sculpting, okay? Now, when you want to sculpt on an object like this, you have to deal with this panel on the left. The top one is your brush, meaning that if you're sculpting, what kind of sculpt brush are you going to use? And I'll click on it to show you that there are many, all sorts of different types. But for now, forget about all of that. We're just going to go with the standard brush, okay? Second one is your stroke. Right now it's a dotted line, but I want to use the freehand or regular stroke, if you will. And then here you got alphas and textures and so forth. We're not going to deal with that for now, okay? All right, so I got a brush and I got a brush stroke. Let's move my mouse on the sphere and see what happens. Okay, I see some stuff going on, right? Which is good. Hit Control Z. And what I'll do is turn off this polyframe for a sec. Okay, so we'll just zoom in a bit. So there you go. All right, so what else can I do with this brush? I can make it bigger or smaller by going up to this draw size, pushing it way up, which will basically make it so big that it's manipulating my entire shape. Or I can go way down, like this. But I can also go and change the intensity. I can go way up. I can go way down. That's too far down. There you go. But I can also go in instead of out. Okay, so what I can do is leave it on Z add and hold down the Alt key. And I'll just increase the intensity a bit. So hold down the Alt key. Or you can go to Z sub instead and subtract. Right? Cool. Get rid of all of that. So that is our draw size and our intensity. And then you have the focal shift. And the focal shift is a bit harder to explain. But I'll leave it at 0 right now, and we'll just, hang on, we'll do an add like this. Okay, so that is set to 0, and now we're going to set this to -100. Okay, so I'm not really sure how to explain that, but you can see the top right here is much flatter, and here it's more rounded. So let's go somewhere in the middle, and let's do maybe somewhere around 50. Okay, and let's see what that looks like. There you go. So whatever name you come up with for that to explain it is fine by me, but that's what it does. Okay, right, so we got our standard brush, we got our stroke, we got the size of the brush, we got the focal shift, and we got the intensity. All right, so what about symmetry? What if I want to create ears or whatnot? I don't want to create two ears separately, I want to do it at the same time. You got this tool here on the right hand side where it says local symmetry. Now, when you click on that, you should see two of these guys, right? And if you don't, it's probably because your sphere is in a position that you don't see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this around, and I'll just turn on my poly shift here so I can kind of see what's going on. And let's look at my mouse here. And what you can do is hold down shift as you move it so it will snap, okay? So let's make sure that this is on, and let's just check and see if it is. Looks like it is not. Not quite sure why, but I typically just hit X on my keyboard. That's much easier, okay? Let's see if it's working this time. Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, so this is your position, right? So we're going to hit Control Z. So now if you brush, you have complete symmetry. Excellent. Okay, so we have symmetry, we can sculpt. Now, what about subdivision levels? Okay, now for that, we're going to go to geometry on this right-hand side here. When you click on that menu, you have the option to click on divide. Now, up here right now, it says active points 8,066, right? When we click on divide, look what happens. It goes up to 32,000, and we can go up 130,000, and it's going up and up and up. 20,000, 2 million, right? So now your sculpt is way smoother, right? Now I'm going to change the size of my brush, and instead of doing that up here, I'm going to right click and push my draw size back here. You can do that here as well. And we're good, okay? All right, what's next? Let's see, what if I want to smooth this? Well, the only thing I have to do is with my regular brush going on, I'm just going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to move over my my sculpt. Okay, so turn off the poly mesh here, and hopefully you can see this. For example, right down here you see all those lines. When I hold down shift and go over it, you'll see it will smooth. And I'll increase the intensity so you can see that even better, right? So just brush over it while holding shift. Okay, so let's see what else. So we have that division. Now there's one little problem though, and I'll just hit Control Z to go back a couple of times and turn on my poly mesh. What you see up here on top of the mesh, and there we are, is you got this pole on top. Now whenever you are working with something like this, hang on, and I'll just move that out. Oh, by the way, I need to explain that. What if you are zoomed in so far that you need to zoom next to your object, but there's no space next to your object to do that? You go outside this white border here, right? So you place your mouse right there, you hold the Alt button, and then you can push it back like that, okay? All right, so we're gonna brush over this pole, and that will always look nasty, okay, regardless what you do. So what you do is, instead of using divide in geometry, you're going to go and look for Dynamesh. Now Dynamesh is located down here. We're going to set a resolution, and let's start somewhere around 300, okay? And then we're going to click on Dynamesh, and look what happens. Instead of having those poles on top and on the bottom, you get something without them, okay? And I'll just turn this off, you can see it. Basically, everything is perfectly divided into little quads. Now, the cool thing about Dynamesh is whenever you are modeling something, and what I'll do is I'll take another tool instead of the normal brush called Move Tool, and we'll click on that, and I'll right click and increase my brush size. So if I'm moving this and stretching it out, look what happens to those perfect quads. They're stretched out like crazy, right? Now the cool thing about Dynamesh is when you hold down your control key and you left click and drag outside of your object, so hold on control, left click, drag, and then release, boom, it's fixed. So what I tend to do is when I'm sculpting the rough stuff, I'll start in Dynamesh. Okay, so this is our starting point basically. Hold on shift, snap it. What I would do is I would go to Dynamesh, set it to a pretty low value, maybe even 170 or so. Click on Dynamesh, and then I'd start to work on it and so forth, right? And then when I'm happy with that, and this is pretty dense mesh, but you know, you get the idea. Then what I would do is turn Dynamesh off and go to divide in my normal geometry, okay? So that I think covers the absolute basics. So how do you move around on the window in front of you, the graphical user interface? Where is the brush? Where can I change standard brush? Size, intensity, focal shift. How can I use Dynamesh? How can I increase geometry? That should be enough for you guys to get started, okay? Hopefully this all made a little bit sense. Let me know if it did or if it did not, and I will help you where I can, okay? Well, thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe, okay? See you guys next time.